Hey, welcome. Today we're going to dive into a single job that is, believe it or not, actually 50 different jobs. And by doing that, we're going to uncover something really fascinating about the character of the United States itself.
So, let me ask you a question. What could possibly be the link between California earthquakes, the swamps of Louisiana, and those giant wind farms you see out in West Texas? I mean, at first glance, that's a total head-scratcher, right?
Well, the answer is a profession that's quite literally shaping the world under our feet, even if we barely notice it: land surveying. Each one of those unique environments, the shaky ground, the murky water, the wind-swept plains, completely rewrites the rules and challenges for a surveyor, making the job totally different from one state to the next.
And this gets right to the heart of what we're exploring. You hear the title, Land Surveyor, and you assume it's the same gig everywhere. But it's not. Not even close. It's more like a collection of 50 highly specialized roles, each one molded by the unique personality of its state. This means, as you can probably guess, that a one-size-fits-all approach to training just isn't going to cut it. So let's dig into why, and you'll see just how dramatically this job transforms as you move across the American landscape.
The most basic factor, of course, is the ground itself. A state's physical geography can completely redefine what a surveyor does day in and day out.
For example, let's take two mountain states. In Colorado, a surveyor is a high-altitude pro, mapping insane elevations and keeping an eye on risks like snowmelt and rock slides. But hop over to West Virginia, still mountains, right? And now you're navigating dense Appalachian forests, often dealing with the long-term impact of the coal industry. Same job title, two totally different realities.
You see the same thing on the coasts. A surveyor in North Carolina is probably mapping the shifting sands of the Outer Banks, battling erosion. But in Hawaii? Well, they do that, plus they have to deal with active volcanoes. Can you just imagine telling a client their property line was just, redrawn by a lava flow? That is a uniquely Hawaiian problem to solve.
And get this, even a term like wetland surveying means something completely different depending on where you stand. In Louisiana, it's all about the bayous, navigating a constantly changing landscape and a maze of permits. Up in Michigan, the focus shifts to protecting vital inland freshwater wetlands, which are governed by a totally different set of laws. Same type of environment, completely different expertise required.
So it's not just the static landscape. The active forces of nature, things like climate and natural hazards, they add a whole other layer of specialization.
When you think of earthquakes, you immediately think of California, where surveyors are critical for finding fault lines and making sure buildings meet seismic codes. But here's a fun fact. Surveyors in Missouri and Tennessee need to be earthquake experts too. Why? Because they work right over the New Madrid seismic zone, where the earth can and does move, demanding a unique kind of knowledge about land stability right in the heartland of the country.
And after a disaster hits, surveyors are like the first responders for the land itself. In California, a huge part of their work is post-fire recovery, reestablishing boundaries that have been wiped out and assessing damage. Meanwhile, in Montana, the focus is often more on the proactive side, managing wildfire risk across massive public forests and dealing with a whole different playbook of state regulations.
But beyond the natural world, a state's biggest industries add yet another layer of specialization, because what we build on the land defines the work just as much as the land itself.
Just look at the boom in renewable energy. If you're a surveyor in Texas working in renewables, you are mapping enormous windy plains to find the perfect spot for wind turbines. But in Nevada, it's all about solar. You're finding the best site in a fragile desert ecosystem and then planning the transmission lines to get all that power back to the grid. Same industry, different power source, totally different job.
And this variety is just incredible. In Nevada, a surveyor is an expert on mining claims. In Kansas, they're mapping out farmland for irrigation. In New York City, they're navigating the concrete jungle of urban redevelopment and historical preservation. And then you've got Alaska, where they're literally battling extreme weather to map pipelines across frozen permafrost.
So what does this all add up to? When you pull back and look at all these different examples, a really fascinating picture starts to emerge.
There's actually a term for this whole thing: georegional specialization. It's really just the idea that a profession isn't one single thing. Instead, it's like a beautiful tapestry woven together from all these different localized expertise. The job title is just the frame. The real picture is made up of all the details defined by a specific place. And the logic here flows so perfectly.
First, every state has its own unique challenges. Second, the surveyors there develop really specialized local knowledge to meet those challenges. And third, that critical expertise can only be passed on through education that's just as specialized and local. It has to be.
As one source puts it so well, land surveying is not a monolithic profession. That's the key idea. It's fluid. It's constantly being shaped and reshaped by the local world all around it.
And this brings us right to the big takeaway. We just can't treat professional education like a one-size-fits-all product. The immense diversity we've just seen proves that for a profession like this to thrive, its training has to be custom-built to tackle the specific challenges of every single state. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We've just seen how one job can splinter into 50 different realities just based on location. It really makes you wonder, which jobs aren't like that? How much of any profession is truly defined not by the title, but by the place you actually practice it?